Hello, this is Mr. Buss, and I'm going to walk you through how to do Lab 13, Soil and Acid Rain. You might recall when we studied Earth's atmosphere that the air contains nitrogen, oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, and other gases in very small amounts. You might also recall that deforestation, combustion of fossil fuels in automobiles, and power plants are some of the factors leading to a rise in atmospheric CO2 levels. When CO2 in the atmosphere combines with water or H2O, the result is carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is a weak acid, but it does enough to make the rain slightly acidic, giving it a pH of about 5 or 6. Recall that with the pH scale, in the middle a pH of 7 is considered neutral, a pH of 1 is considered highly acidic, and a pH of 14 is considered very basic. So in this regard, water is typically neutral and it would be about 7, and the carbonic acid has now shifted the pH to about a 5 or 6 range, which this is a logarithmic scale, and so a change from 7 to 6 and then 6 to 5 is actually a change of pH 100 times. Although carbon dioxide, which forms carbonic acid in the atmosphere, gives you a significant change in pH, what really can make a difference is the addition of sulfur dioxide, or SO2. When sulfur dioxide combines with water, the result is a very strong acid called sulfuric acid, H2SO4. Sulfuric acid is a much stronger acid than carbonic acid, and now rainwater with sulfuric acid in it is going to have a pH of about 4, which is 1,000 times more acidic than a neutral pH of 7. So what's the source of the sulfur dioxide? It's the burning of fossil fuels. So in this lab, we're going to take a weak sulfuric acid solution and pour it through 2 different soil samples. One soil sample will just contain organic material, and another will contain limestone or calcium carbonate, which acts as a buffer. So the purpose or objective of Lab 13, Soil and Acid Rain, is to compare and contrast the effect of acid rain on 2 different soils. Soil A is just purely organic soil. So this is just a potting soil mix. And then soil B is that same potting soil mix with an added ingredient, and that is, I wrote it on the card here, it contains lime. All right, so that's what lime looks like. And you can see those little pieces of lime in the soil. And lime is basically calcium carbonate and calcium bicarbonate. And so we're going to see, we can compare when acid rain goes through soil A, what is the pH, the end result pH of the soil, and when acid rain goes through soil B, what is the end result pH of that soil. So here's the basic setup you're going to use for this experiment. All right, so you have to attach a ring to a supporting structure and then grab a funnel. Use 2 beakers. You can use the 250 milliliter size, works pretty well. You'll need purified water. If your purified water is empty or needs refilling, do that over here. All right, so this is where the purified water is. I run it through. This is reverse osmosis, so we've got a filter, a pre-filter, a carbon filter, a reverse osmosis membrane, deionization back here, and so basically I run it and I get purified water and I collect it into this container here. So if this is out, and then go ahead and refill it. So you'll also have pick up 2 filters, coffee filters. And then you'll use a pH meter and a lab quest. All right, so let's go ahead and run this then. Go ahead and take one of your coffee filters and carefully place it into the funnel. Let's go ahead and pick up 2 scoops of soil from soil A. So I'm going to go to soil A and I'm going to get 2 scoops of soil from A. And I'm going to carefully add those into my filter. Okay, so that's ready to go. All right, and so now what we're going to want to do is get some acid rain in one of the beakers. So we're going to go pick that up. All right, so lab 13, we're going to use 100 milliliters of sulfuric acid. It's a diluted sulfuric acid solution. Whoop. Almost forgot. Make sure you wear goggles for this experiment. So I've got about 100 milliliters of acid rain. All right, now what I'm going to want to do is find out what the initial pH of the acid rain is. That's one of the questions in the lab write-up. So I'm going to show how to use the pH meter and do that. Here's the deal with the pH meter. The end of this is where the sensor is, and don't just pull this off because it'll possibly break. So you're going to want to keep this upright and then loosen the cap. This is the safest way to do this. Okay. Set the bottle aside somewhere that you're not going to spill it. Remove the cap. Set the cap aside. And then rinse off the pH meter. Get the solution off, that storage solution. Okay. And then put it in the acid rain. Okay. And just take a note of the live readout and write that down in your write-up. Okay, remove the pH meter. Rinse it off again. Always have to rinse it off with the pure water in between usage. And then never let it sit out. That'll ruin the pH meter. It always has to be in the storage solution. If it sits out and dries out, it'll actually not work anymore, possibly. So whenever you're not using it, put the cap back on, and then tighten the cap back into position, and then that's ready to be laid down and stored again. All right, now that we know what the pH of the acid is before it goes through the soil, we're ready to pour it through the soil. We know that the pH of the soil is roughly 7. I've already done that and checked it. So pH just normally of soil is usually around neutral, anywhere from probably 5 to 8. And I checked, and this soil in particular is a pH of 7, and I already wrote that in your write-up. So you don't need to know what this would be when added to water. You're just going to pour the acid through it and see what the pH would be after that. So I'm going to make sure that I've got an empty beaker below the soil. And then I'm going to take my acid rain, and I'm going to slowly pour it through. And it's going to start collecting. And you're going to want to pour it through a few times just to make sure that all the soil gets contacted and absorbed. So slowly pour it through. You might need to drop this down a little bit to make sure it doesn't spill. The acid isn't very concentrated, but you certainly don't want to get it on your clothes, or your hands, or your eyes. So I poured it through once. I'm going to pour it through again. and just exchange the beakers here. And in my video, I'm just going to do that a total of 3 times. So that was my second pour. And then here's the third time through. Once you've poured that through 3 times, go ahead and use your pH meter again and pick up a reading. This time a reading of the acid after it's gone through the soil. So just like before, loosen the cap, remove it, set that aside, rinse off your pH meter, and then check out. Move the pH meter around a little bit just to get the solution. And then just check out the live reading and write down the pH of the acid after it has contacted soil A. Write that down in your write-up. Remove the pH meter, rinse it off, and put the cap on. And put it back in the storage solution. So we can just throw this in the garbage. We're done with soil A. So it's probably easiest to bring the garbage can over to your setup. Okay. Rinse out the funnel either in the sink or with the distilled water. Place the funnel, take your acid rain, just go ahead and rinse that out. Grab a new filter, put the filter in the funnel, obtain 2 scoops of soil B this time. So this time I'm going to make sure I grab the other soil, so I'm going to grab soil B. Add the soil B to the funnel, and the filter paper's already in there. Get 100 milliliters more of the acid rain. Make sure you've got the goggles on. (100 milliliters more acid rain). All right, and just like soil A, make sure you've got an empty beaker below. You got soil B in here. All right, and then carefully pour the acid rain. So soil B is in there. And again, you're going to carefully and slowly pour the acid rain through soil B 3 times. If it doesn't seem like it's mixing up really well, I took a stir out here and it doesn't hurt to, see if I can show this here. It doesn't hurt to just stir the dirt around a little bit and make sure that all the dirt is actually getting contacted and wet. All right, so I'm gonna pour it through a second time. All right, I'm gonna pour it through a third time. Nice and slowly, making sure that I get all the soil saturated very quickly. All right, so when we're all done with the third rinse through of the acid rain, just like before, check the pH. And check the pH of the acid that came through. And go ahead and write down the pH for soil B in your write-up. Rinse off the pH meter. Put the cap back on, back in the container. And don't forget to wipe up any spills and messes you made at your table before you take off.